So, Alex, 27 years in the paddock, and before then you were a motocross rider. So, actually, I'm wondering if this is the most amount of time you've spent at home in the best part of 3 decades.
Yeah, easily. Before this, the last time I was home this long, I was living with my parents. So it's been quite a while.
And I was telling everybody, you are a 12-time world champion, really, if you want to take that. We had a question earlier from Jerry Burgess, about Jerry Burgess, asking, did he ever say to you, I can fire you whenever I want?
Yeah. That was like in the first actual conversation I had with him. So on the phone, I didn't know who the guy was. I'd rung him because I had a message to ring him, and he offered me the job pretty much. And I said, I've just got the job just like that. And he said, oh, I can fire you at any time, so don't worry. So that was pretty much it.
Unfortunately, he didn't do that. And actually, all of those world championships you won with Jerry at the helm. So tell us a little bit about Jerry, about the man behind those titles. What was he like to work with?
Oh, he's fantastic for me. I mean, JB was like my second dad, I guess, in a lot of ways. He taught me pretty much everything I know about road racing bikes, and but he wasn't the sort of guy that teaches you as in, hey, this is how we do it, watch what I'm doing, or this is what I'm doing. It wasn't like that at all. It was almost just, you had to watch what he was doing and just take it on board. And often you would suggest something to him and he'd say, don't be stupid, you idiot. And then the next day he might do what you suggested. So you would think to yourself, well, hey, I'm on the right track. So it's great. He's a great guy. It's funny knowing him personally and then watching him talk to other people. Sometimes he could be quite harsh and come across as rude, but not with me and not with the guys.
Yeah, not very protective of the guys, wasn't he? I mean, I actually found that he was quite protective towards me as well, and did lots of interviews with him on the grid. As you know, he'd stand there with his arms folded and his head down, and then you go and tap him on the shoulder and be able to chat to him about Valentino or what they'd done, what you guys had done to the bike. Not the kind of guy that was a sort of hand holder or a people pleaser or tactile. Just got the job done, really, I think.
Yeah, he was definitely looked after the mechanics, the group, in ways, not like he wasn't a pat you on the back kind of guy. You knew if you did well just because he wasn't yelling at you. But it was more like he would stick up for you in a lot of ways, like saying, no, the guys aren't working any longer, they're too tired, we're all going back to the hotel. Or we'll come back in the morning. It's, silly to have these guys out here, past, whatever, late at night because they're going to make mistakes. So we're out of here, and he would just make a stand often for things like that, or all sorts of stuff, conditions at work, stuff like that. He would just say, no, that's not good enough for my guys. We're going to do it differently, and you can just get stuffed really and take it or leave it.
He's like your union leader as well as your crew chief then, in that respect.
Very much so, yeah.
It's fascinating to look at the team because obviously you all went pretty much, didn't you, from Mick to Valentino, and then from Honda to Yamaha, and it's the same group of guys. What is it that bonds you so tightly together, do you think?
Oh, I mean, it's clearly the rider. In that way. I mean, initially it's kind of like you're in a little battle and this is your little army, and so you get quite close, you work well together, and you don't want to let each other down. So I guess it's like that. I mean, we kind of all felt the same way at Honda when we left Honda initially. I mean, we felt a little bit like the rider felt at that stage in his career, so it wasn't that hard to leave. And for me, I really wanted to go where JB was going because I hadn't finished learning what I would like to learn, So so it was easy for me to follow along. Yeah, that wasn't too hard at all.
That's
And anyway, I kind of think if I didn't follow the rider at that stage, then probably I wouldn't be working there now anyway. You know, my time would have passed, and I'd be back home here doing something else.
It's quite interesting that you say that, because obviously it's well documented about Valentino wanting to leave Honda and prove that it was the man and not the machine. And, you know, obviously he went on to do very much that. And it's not just about Valentino. It's also about the team that he's got around him, and clearly trusted you guys very much and wanted you all to go with him. But you saying that wasn't a hard decision. Did you not feel happy at Honda at that time?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, when I first started at Honda, it was very much more of a family kind of feeling. Like it was the engineers and the mechanics and the rider. We all had, you know, one direction to work in. And I think Valentino was riding so well and Mick had ridden so well that it seemed to become too easy for those guys. And perhaps, I'm not sure what happened, but it did drift apart within the garage, I guess, sort of the upper management from us down the bottom, the lower guys. So you kind of had that feeling, just a gut feeling more than anything really. And so it wasn't that hard to leave, because when we went to Yamaha was very much like, it was even more family than that. They were super happy to have us all, and very much engineers through to everyone working there just all wanted to do well, you know, and it was all very much a group effort. At Honda, it stopped feeling like a group effort at that time anyway.
It's not
But
surprising that
those sorts
Yamaha
of
really...
things,
Sorry, go on.
sorry, those sort of things can come down to just almost one or two people in management,
Yeah.
and the feeling permeates throughout the group, you know. So it's always really everybody has a role to play, and if you're sort of not doing a great job, it can damage the whole team without you even really realizing it. So anyway, that's how it happened.
It's not surprising that Yamaha had open arms when you went there, because I think it's fair to say they were pretty lost at the time, really. I mean, they haven't won a championship for so long, and they really had found themselves all at sea. But how did it go from being in that situation where, you know, Yamaha was just not how we think of Yamaha now, to Welkom 2014, and then winning the championship there? How did they make such a massive change?
Well, I've explained it like this a little bit before to people. It's like Yamaha essentially had everything they needed to win before we got there, give or take. I mean, they needed it. They needed a good rider, but they had the good riders, and they should have been winning more before we arrived. It's like they were a Rubik's cube, but it was all messed up. And JB and Valentino and Furusawa were able to flick all the sides around and get all the colours right, and that was it. You know, once that it took really it took a few years, but they had what they needed already there. So once everything was lined up, it started to work properly. So they just needed some direction, and that came from those three guys essentially. I mean, I'd love to say it was all me. I'd love to say it was all me, but unfortunately, it wasn't.
Knowing how Japanese people work within motorsport, how much of a key do you think Furusawa-san was within that, in terms of getting things moving and getting decisions made?
Oh, massive, yeah. He made decisions about some engine design things that were fundamental that helped everybody. And he was happy to have us all working there, and he would talk to us, just stand next to us and say, what do you think about this? You know, like to each mechanic, as well as the chief mechanics and all the other engineers. I'm not sure if he was loved by the other engineers, the Japanese engineers, maybe because he asked too much of them or asked a lot of them, I'm not sure. But from our side, he was fantastic. Always was very interested in what we were doing, and always always took the time to ask. And often we would say, oh, look, I think this is not very good. And within a week or two, it had changed, just based on that small conversation. It might be a 5-minute conversation with him.
It must feel nice from your point of view, though, when someone asks you your opinion on things and you can give your experience the benefit of the time that you've had in the paddock and with the rider as well. That kind of really feels like it connects a team, doesn't it? Everybody wants to think that their opinion is valued.
Yeah, it's important too. I mean, because not just being valued. I mean, there were things we knew that we could help with, and so I mean, if we didn't do it, it would have been a loss. We knew things at that stage that could help, just from our experience working at Honda and just our group experience, I guess. But Furusawa was fantastic for all of that type of thing. He was really, really good, and I miss seeing his face around. I've seen it a few times, and I get an email from him at Christmas time, and every time I think about what it was like back then. I remember doing something stupid in pit lane in Malaysia and gesturing to some people in the crowd, having some fun. But if it was seen by perhaps another Japanese engineer, they would have said, right, that guy there, we're going to sack him because he's an idiot. But Furusawa just laughed and thought it was fantastic. So I can't tell you exactly what it was, but anyway.
Was it?
So I'm glad he did.
With the front tree? Was it one of those or something like that?
I can't tell you.
Okay, all right. We don't want you to get fired now, all these years later.
No.
Let me transport you back to...
I'm getting closer to the end than the beginning now.
Yeah, aren't we all? Alex, let me take you back to Welkom 2014. One of my favourite, I think it's probably my favourite MotoGP moment, but from your perspective, on the inside line, that weekend, did you think that he was going to win that race? Can you take yourself back and tell me what you were thinking in South Africa?
I wasn't sure. I definitely wasn't sure whether he could win. I knew he had obviously the ability to win, and I could feel we were getting closer, but I didn't know that we would win there. And that's become, that is probably my favourite race. I mean, it might not be the favourite race for people that just watch it. I see the BT Sport are doing a few bits and pieces, and I don't think Welkom was one of the ones people chose, but because I was on the inside, it would be the one I would choose. A lot of it was to do with how hard everyone had worked to that point, and to see the faces of the Japanese engineers after it. I mean, it's very hard to explain how relieved, excited, fulfilled all those engineers were, winning that race. I mean, the bike was nowhere near as good as it should have been at that point, or it could have been, and Valentino basically just rode out of his skin. But the bike was good enough with such a good rider to win, but it still had a lot to do with the rider on that day. But the bike was good enough for him to use. So
I think I might have added a decade onto that. Obviously, it was 2004, not 2014. If I said 2014. Yeah.
I knew what you were on about.
Yeah, no, you did. Thank you. And I was there as well. So, was there a party that night? Were there any celebrations? What happened after the race?
Yeah, there was basically, it's a very South Africa. You ended up in these hotels that were like full board, where they looked after you. They gave you dinner and breakfast, but it was kind of more like a school camp at the hotels in Welkom then. And so the place we were staying at had like a courtyard and a swimming pool, and we had, I think it was a barbecue actually. Now I'm trying to think back. I think it was a barbecue we had that night, and after we'd all packed up and everything, and it was just so good. It wasn't a party like pumping music, and it wasn't anything like that. It was just
like Indianapolis.
No, it wasn't like that at all. No, this was more of I don't know, it's more like a family. It was like a Christmas party that just got out of hand. You know, it was really good. It was just fantastic. You know, and it's just because of the faces on all the Japanese engineers and all the people that had worked so hard. Were everyone was just so excited, and then at one stage at the very end, I remember people were just everyone started getting thrown in the swimming pool, and yeah, we didn't have mobile phones back then, so no one, you know, everyone freaks out and just pats it like, oh no, don't throw me in the pool, I've got a phone, you know, and none of that. So off we got thrown in the pool, and everyone was mucking around. It was great. And then I remember going to the airport the following day, and some of the Japanese engineers only had one pair of shoes, and you could hear them walking along squelching in the shoes because they were still wet. It was so funny. It was great. It's still it's probably my favorite race for all those reasons.
Yeah, I can imagine the work that went in behind that. It sounds like you
Yeah.
were staying in a much better place than we were in Welkom. I remember having to sleep in my clothes because my bed sheets were so dirty, it was so disgusting. I think I got all my clothes out and laid them on the bed and slept in them. Anyway, let's not go there because that's not such a nice story. Why do you call him the rider?
When I first started, the Japanese would sometimes call the riders the rider. You know, they would just like it was a spare part.
Yeah, like
you know, like and I don't know, it just sort of stuck, and I started calling him the rider. We used to call Mick the rider, more or less behind his back, I guess. And then when Valentino started, I just continued calling him the rider, and yeah, I just call him the rider because of that. I don't know. And
he
it's
calls
just,
himself the rider though as well, doesn't he?
oh, well, maybe it's stuck to all of us now. But yeah, I refer to him as the rider sometimes when we're all talking together. So yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the nickname kind of almost that stuck from the Japanese when I first started.
Alex, when I interviewed Valentino over the years, since before we could speak any English, and going all the way back, going 24 years back, he's always very fizzy, effervescent, open, looks you in the eye. Makes you feel like you're the only person in the whole world. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant interviewee. He's a professional interviewee, and he's very vivacious, and he has incredible charisma. I mean, if he walks into a room, you know Valentino's walked in the room, even if you can't see him because of the energy that he brings into the room. But I heard Jeremy Burgess once say on a podcast, when he was describing Valentino in the garage, the one word he said was calm. Does that ring true with you?
Yeah, he is. I mean, I think one of the reasons he liked working with JB and us, to be honest, at the time, is because in general we're calm, because nothing is going to get achieved by yelling and screaming, or we're all there to do the same thing with the tools that we have. So yeah, he's always calm. I mean, I've never seen him ever throw a helmet, kick a panel. You know, I might have heard a few.
The riders, we do see toys being thrown out of the pram on a regular basis with certain other riders.
Yeah,
it is a different kind of personality, isn't it? And how
he's definitely had. He's had reason to throw a helmet. I wouldn't have minded if he threw a helmet from time to time or screamed or something, but never does. And he's been in situations that are the most depressing times, and yet he'll still sit down and just be calm and talk about it. And I think that translates to the people that are around him, and it's been an asset for him, I believe.
And how, obviously you spent years working with Mick, your formative years in the paddock. So could you, it's a difficult question really, but just tell us the differences between working with Mick and Valentino, and a bit about Mick's personality in the garage.
Well, I mean, I worked with Daryl Beattie to start with, and Daryl was much the same as Valentino. Perhaps he had a bit more of what you would call a race face than Valentino. And Mick was pretty much, he had a race face most of the time. I mean race face, I mean serious, wanted to win, often angrily kind of wanted to win, you know, seemed aggressive, wanted to just win everything. And I've spoken about it before, from everything from driving to and from the hotel. He wanted to be first. He wanted to be the first away. He'd often, if the gate opened at a practice session at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, he was like, he'll be just the first guy on the track, get the job done, and come back to the engineers and say, "Is there anything else?" And they'd go, and he goes, "Don't just make stuff up. Like if I've done everything, I'm out of here." And they'd often, you know, say, "Okay, we're done." And so he'd be out of there at 2 or 3 o'clock, when other people would still be riding around in circles. And Valentino was much more calmer. He would turn up at the garage. "Hey, Stanley's come to say hello."
Oh, we can't see him, sadly. Hello, Stanley.
That's a pity. I'm up here on the hill of my place, and Stanley's come running up, and he's obviously waking. Yeah, that's a dog. So I don't know what time it is now, but I can't see it on my phone. And so, he's pretty happy.
Probably happy to see you.
Yeah.
A lot of people are asking. I'm just flicking through some of the questions, because obviously this is a chat for everybody. A lot of people are saying, did JB ever clash with Valentino in the garage?
I never saw them personally have clashes. I mean, they might have discussed something privately, but no, not really. I mean, sometimes they had differences of opinion, and it might even be from bike setup or something like that. And I'm sure he would say, "Well, let's try it this way and try it your way." But there never really was clashes like you might expect, because both of them wanted to win motorcycle races, and both were trying to do the right thing. So it never really, I guess when you're both trying to do the same thing, what's the point of arguing and yelling at each other? That never seemed to happen. So it was always very good, really.
Right, I'm just going to flick through to the end of these now. I'm guessing that you're in touch with Brent and the rest of the guys in lockdown, I presume?
Yeah, just a couple of days ago, we all had a meeting on the phone with the whole team on Skype. You know, so it kind of looks like a bit of a Zoom style meeting, and just catching up, talking about what might be happening, what Doohan are saying, what teams are saying, how everyone's going. I mean, clearly Europe is in a lot worse shape than we are here in Australia, and talking to those guys was, you know, pretty humbling, really, about how none of them have really left their houses other than the supermarket. So that was
Alex, we're not allowed to. I mean, here it's a little.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of.
It's a little more relaxed in the UK, but certainly where I am in France, we're not allowed out for more than an hour, and the police are everywhere to check on you, and you have to have an attestation, and you have to have a certificate. So it's been the same. Italy has been really strict. Spain is super strict as well.
Yeah, well, I've talked to all the guys, and I hear all that. So I'm very lucky living where I am, particularly living on a property, so I can sort of go and do as I please, and we're still allowed to, you know, head out to the beach whenever we want, as long as we don't hang out with people, just by ourselves, and play golf. Same sort of thing. You're allowed to.
You're in good shape then over there. I don't know what you can say to us. I mean, I think we're all hearing different things about going back to racing. What are your guys talking about in terms of, is there going to be any racing? Will the racing be over a period of a few weeks? Will there be 2 races in one weekend? What information could you share with us?
Well, I've heard quite a few different things, and one of them, you know, they would love to try and get 10 races done this year. That's their, that would be a big goal of theirs, but they may not do that. And if they can get 5, even, they would try to do that, you know. So everyone wants to do something, but ultimately nobody wants to do anything that's going to be stupid and harmful to anybody. So there's all sorts of things about if we do go ahead, it might be closed circuit, minimal team, blah, blah, blah. But there's also the big thing that on top of all of this is what each country is allowing, you know. So let's say in the worst case scenario for me would be they say, okay, we're going to race 5 races in Spain, come on over. And I say, well, my government's not letting me leave the country because we've now eradicated the virus or something like that. And so we're not going to do that until next year. So in that case, well, yeah, I would be stuck here and other people. So I think it's all going to depend on what each country or regions decide and where we go.
Ultimately.
Well, it's going to be down to the virus first and then the government second. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And
yeah.
I think behind closed doors is an absolute given for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be any crowds at all. Now, I need to get slightly more frivolous now and ask you about growing pineapples, sweet potatoes. What are you doing today, Alex Strand, that Ellen does every day on your Instagram? Are you guys still good?
Yeah, well, Ellen keeps sneaking up on me and making videos, and I don't know how it started, but it's become quite a thing. What's Alex doing? And she's always busting me doing something remotely stupid or oddly interesting. So growing pineapples is something that I've just done just almost as a hobby. They're dead easy to grow and it's kind of fun, but it's very interesting to a lot of people in Europe because they don't have the chance or the climate or they've just never seen them. So I mean, seen the way they grow. So it's interesting for people. So I've been doing that. What else? Just working around the farm here. Like I've got enough work here to keep me busy for another 6 months.
I'm sure Ellen is very happy to have you at home for once, which sort of leads me a little, just making sure some people are still watching and you still want me to carry on chatting. Because I know sometimes I cut it short and everyone's like, no, you should have carried on talking. Like, we're not doing anything. So I'm going to carry on talking.
I can't believe you still can't see me. That's the worst. But this is far better than what it used to be like in the old days for communication to ring home. Yeah. So even though you can't see me, the fact that we can talk and it's not costing me a cent is a massive difference. 20 or 30 years ago, it was hotel phones, phone cards. It was terrible.
Exactly. Communication has changed so massively. It was a big deal to make a phone call when we first started. And I remember living in Japan when I was in my early 20s, and we used to have this little, it is obviously illegal, but I don't think anybody's going to shout at me now. So what you used to have to do is put a safety pin into the wire of the phone box and then connect that to a piece of metal, and you'd get, and honestly, someone's going to go, someone's having you on, but you'd get an international phone call for the price of a local call. And an international phone call for 10 minutes would wipe us out. You know, it was so expensive to make a call from Japan to the UK. I used to ring home once a week on a Sunday afternoon. And we'd all be there with our safety pins and the police would come and look for you, you know. So even making a phone call, it sounds ridiculous now, but making a phone call home was really difficult back in the day. Whereas now, you know, here we are moaning that we can't see you, but hey, we can hear you.
I can top that story.
Go on then. Not your competitive, Alex.
Basically, when we would the trucks we used to have small trucks. They would have a fax machine in them, and people would come and connect the fax machine up. And one day they left their device at the track. It's a telephone with some clips on it and a little dialing ring. So that was in the truck I was driving, and I kept it. And then back in Belgium, I used to go out at night, break into the phone box. Well, not break, get in the phone box. And the money part of the phone box was like Fort Knox, right? So it was, you can't get into that. But the wiring part of the phone box was nothing. A screwdriver would just pop that open, and I just clip onto the connectors, and just ring home to Ellen for free. And I'd sit at the bottom of this phone box in the middle of the night calling home because, that's what I was doing. But I remember seeing every night I'd walk past the baker, and the baker would just give me the weirdest look, you know, because he was still baking. I was just next to the hotel that we used to stay in. So there we were. And at one stage, I thought about running the wires to my hotel room, but it was just a little bit too far. But anyway, they never caught me. So they're probably looking for me.
It's the small things, isn't it? It's when you get a small win that pleases the human spirit the most, I think. So
well, we used to sometimes at the circuits you would get free phones for the journalists. So you would just try to do whatever you can do. Back in the day, it was not as easy. You just try to walk in to where the journalists were you guys, and different countries, and then walk into the phone booths. They used to have these booths set up, and see if you could ring home. Sorry, I'm throwing a bit of wood for the dog at the same time here. He's very excited.
I'm hoping that Ellen's going to walk up in a minute and go, "What are you doing, Alex?"
No, I think she's happy that I'm playing with Stanley right now, and she's got some peace and quiet to have a cup of tea, perhaps, because I'm 150 meters away from the house.
Okay, well, if anybody's confused, obviously it's daytime. It's daytime, nighttime. Daytime in Australia and nighttime where we are. Just so anybody knows, it's just kicking in. You're not going mad. It is actually nighttime in Europe. So Briggsy.
Mm-hmm.
How's it been? So in the last sort of 27, 28 years, you've had a family. You've kind of had to be a remote parent for quite a lot of time because you've been away every single year, at least for half a year, if not longer. How has that?
Well,
how's that been? Because you know, clearly you guys are all very tight.
It's basically because Ellen's done such a good job that I look good. That's all. I mean, I remember when the kids were younger. This is sad and slightly funny. The kids used to call me iPad Dad because I would, at this time, they like, say I'm talking to you now, but it would be in reverse. They would be having breakfast. I'd be having dinner, and I would put the iPad on the table where I was, or breakfast or dinner, whatever, and we could eat a meal together, but I was just an iPad sitting on the table. And I've even watched a movie with them when they were young, you know, like 4 or 5 or 6, I can't remember now. They're 20 now, so they seem to be okay. But, watched a movie through the iPad with them, sitting next to them, just being an iPad. So that was bizarre. But sad and kind of good that the technology was around, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're laughing about iPad Dad. It's a brilliant story. But actually, you know, there are times where it is flipping difficult, isn't it, when you're away from your family and you're traveling, and it's not something to talk about because obviously it's a great job and we all love it. We're all obsessed with the job that we do, but the travel is always the thing that, I mean, as Julian Riders, if he's still listening to this, will probably be nodding. It is the travel that's the pain in the arse, really, because it is being away from your family that's the hardest part of this job. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, that's a given. There's no doubt. But once I leave, I don't dwell on it because that's a decision we've made. So once I've left home, I'm there for a reason, and the next reason is to try and win a race. You know, so I kind of focus on that, and also there's no point whinging or complaining about it because I have the choice. So. But the actual travel, like to and from in an aeroplane, sitting there, or on a bus or in a car, I don't mind at all. I don't really mind. It doesn't bother me. Yeah. What bothers me is, sure, the time away, being on your own sometimes in a hotel, that type of thing. But it's the checking in and checking out of everything, from hotels to restaurants to buses to waiting around in airports. All of those things I dislike, but
it's part
I'm griping about something.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's just part of the gig, isn't it, really? But it makes, I think, you know, over the years, you know, obviously you and I are very good friends. We have a racing family within the paddock. There are people that connect together, different groups, different little collectives that maybe go out for dinner. And it's, for my side of things, just being a bit selfish. I know it's not about me, this chat, but it's really important to have those people that you trust within the working environment, and our working environment obviously is the paddock, to have that kind of racing family, that connection with people, because you spend often more time. I spend, you know, a lot of time with you, with the MotoGP gang. That you spend more time with that family than you do with your own family. So, you know, it's really important, isn't it, to have those connections so you can share those sort of highs and lows, and also talk about stuff that is going on a little bit at home, just if you need to get it kind of off your chest. And I think those are things that never kind of really get discussed. But there is a sort of community within the paddock, isn't there? We all have our little cliques, I suppose, and friends and families that we rely on. And I'd just like to say thank you to you for being such a good friend.
Well, thank you. Well, same to you. I mean, it's like it's like a little town, and some people in the town you don't like, some people you do like, but everyone gets on because the town's such a little town. But you do have your friends in that town, you know, so they're the people you go to, like you and a few other people that, you know, when things aren't going smoothly or wrong, or, you know, you can't talk to some of the guys in your team, or you can, but it depends on whatever problem you are. You know, everyone has real normal lives and normal problems, as well as racing stuff. You know, so sometimes you got to chew the fat, have a drink, whatever. So yeah,
And
that's
obviously,
how it is.
you know, within racing, stuff happens. It's the nature of racing that, you know, you have to sort of be able to talk about, and we lose people and we miss people.
You got to be careful who you talk to, though, because it's a popular sport. You know, sometimes if you were to whinge or complain to the wrong person, the next thing you know, it's up in lights or print somewhere. So you got to be very careful.
Yeah, that's true. I know journalists
Yeah.
are not to be trusted, although some you can.
Yeah.
Let's end this conversation on a high note with
Right.
your highlights of your highlights of races. So let's go favourite track first of all.
Oh man, I used to say to people when they ask me that, I just go, any track we win at is my favourite. But I mean, I love any track with undulations in it. I think that's because of motocross background. I just like anything that goes up and down hills. So Bruno is a great one. Mugello is a great one. Phillip Island a little to some extent because it's such a pretty track, flowing track. I kind of like flowing tracks with a bit of elevation change. So yeah, those three are probably my favourite.
Yeah, the sort of old school ones. So favourite race you've already said is probably Welkom 2004.
Welkom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go. Favourite party?
Well, people do think that we have these massive parties after races all the time. I don't know why people think that. It's just, I guess, the image that Hollywood projected about Formula One and racing. Mostly we just pack up and head home. But every now and then we end up having a party, primarily because most of the paddock is stuck somewhere.
Yeah.
And like you can't fly out on a Sunday night. And this seems to happen a lot when we're in the States. The flights are not out until the next afternoon often. So that means that gives you some recovery time. So the best parties have always been actually probably the ones in the States, sometimes in Brazil. And I know the one you're referring to, that we had a party in Indianapolis. But the last time I remember that was getting thrown out onto the concrete out a back door by some bouncers, and then walking home alone. So that was the last time I can remember Indianapolis. That was pretty rugged.
Okay.
I remember Chad Reed tackling me out of nowhere because for some reason he likes to do that when he's been having a few sherbets. And
yeah. Well, the year before, the year before that we all got thrown out of the Indianapolis party was the year that Giacomo, all right, I've only had one glass of wine. Giacomo Agostini was there, Valentino's party underneath the bar, and we all had a great time. Everyone was dancing on the bar. There was that flipping song playing from the Black Eyed Peas. Tonight's going to be a good night. That terrible song that we're all singing. And then we ended up, I don't know, I can say this, we all ended up in Valentino's room drinking his minibar. Do you remember that?
Well, at least he can afford it, so don't stress about it.
Well, there was about 20 of us in there. It wasn't intimate or anything. I don't know how we
No,
ended
no.
up, but I think it was the only room that had any alcohol in, so we all ended up all round to Valentino's place.
No, yeah, I remember it, but I remember a couple of guys turning up after cleaning out their minibars because we'd run out and bringing other stuff from all their rooms in plastic bags, in their laundry bags of their minibars they'd all cleaned out to join us. So, yeah, that was a bit of fun.
I think we're all just a bunch of scrubbers, really, at heart, aren't we? There was a question there that's, somebody's asking, and I don't know who it was, will you ever write a book? That could be good.
I can't spell.
You don't have to write it. Julian Ryder will write it for you. You just, he can ghost it for you, and Jules will be like, yes, I'll do that. You could write a book. It would be really interesting. It'd be cool. It'd be good to see, the other side from within the garage, and we hope that tonight we've kind of revealed a little bit of behind the scenes MotoGP action.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the interesting thing is that reality is that the notoriety or fame is not really mine. It's just because of the riders I work for are so good. So people have an interest in that, and as default, they have an interest in me because I've been there. So I don't know if people would like to read a book. Maybe if I'm on hard times, I'll think about it.
If this carries on, we'll all be on hard times. Stephen Dyson saying, does Valentino like a good party? I'll answer that for you. Yes, he certainly does. Talking of Valentino, there's quite a few people here just trying to flick back, saying, what is going to happen if there's no racing this year in terms of contracts? Do you think Valentino would race in 2021?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I mean, I think if there is no racing, our contracts expire, and then we have to sign new ones, and the manufacturers have to make decisions as to who their riders are and where they want to be placed, and the mechanics the same thing. So none of us know that at the moment. I have no idea. I mean, I would think if we'll just carry on and go racing next year the way we were planning to go racing this year, give or take. I think that's probably what will happen.
Okay. And are you? What about Alex Briggs? Would you like to become a crew chief for somebody before you bow out, or are you thinking that when the rider goes that you might go to?
I don't really know. I don't think if I was to work for a young kid as a chief mechanic, I'm not sure how fair it would be on him if I was thinking about stopping a few years into it, So those decisions I'd have to make at the time, but I wouldn't like to start with a young kid that had a prospect of doing really well for, 10 years or more, and me saying, well, I'm only going to work for 5 years. I don't know. So it depends on the situation, just depends on everything. Do I have 1 year contracts? I have no idea. My mum asked me the first time I ever started, how long are you going to do this job for? And I still have the same answer. I don't know.
That was 27 years ago.
Yeah, pretty much.
I can see the Geordie Lodger scribbling. What, is that actual Valentino? No, it's not Valentino saying hi.
Valley.
Show me.
46.
Show me.
High.
Show me.
With a tick.
Hang on a minute. I think Valentino might have been this thing.
Well, that's good.
That would be good, wouldn't it? Where are we? Oh my goodness me. Hello. Hello, Valentino. Your rider's been watching a little bit. He's dipped in. So, ciao, Valley. It's nice to know that
Right.
you've been,
So as soon as he comes on, you've just dished me. I'm done now, am I? I'm spent.
Yeah, exactly. You've been usurped once again by the number 46. No, not at all. It's very nice. Valentino, if you're still watching and you ever want to come and chat live on here, please just let us know, because I don't want to hassle you. But, there are lots of people here that would love to have a supper club with you, my friend.
Well, at least you might get to see him with a better connection than I have, clearly.
Well, it'd be nice to, yeah, exactly. It'd be nice to see who I'm talking to. Just while we're on, before I let you go, I know you've been to the ranch Valentino's ranch and had lots of fun there. Can you just give us a little bit of an insight into what it's like to ride there? Because he's still competitive, right, at the ranch?
Yeah, the ranch is like is Valhalla for motorcycle riders. It's great. It's just like another world. It's like you enter a portal of fun and agelessness. You know, like I ride once a year now, pretty much, on a dirt bike, and that's there. And when I ride there, I feel like I'm 16 again.
You're Peter Pan.
I don't feel like it the next day. I normally have this struggle into breakfast, walking like a half shut pocket knife. But yeah, it's great. It's really good. And the fun he has watching us ride and watching us crash, I think he gets a big kick out of. So it's great. I really enjoy it, and I really appreciate that he asks us to go. Pretty much the last few years, every time we've gone to Misano, we've had a night and a dinner there, and it's been great. I love it.
Yeah, great fun. And just on that note, really, at the age of 41, I mean, he's pretty bloody incredible to be riding at this level, at this top level. And his fingers crossed, I think, from all bike fans, that, you know, Valentino can get another win, be on the top step of the podium. I think we'd all love to see that. We'd love to see your face in the garage celebrating. That would be truly an amazing thing. Although to see any racing at all this year, I think, is going to be amazing. And we'll take anything, won't we? Behind closed doors, whatever track, we don't care. We know it's not the most important thing right now, but if we can see some racing this year, and we know Dorna are trying everything to make that happen. So fingers crossed that will happen, and
Yeah.
we'll see Valentino race again.
Oh, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. He'll race until he can't walk.
Okay, we're running out of time. There's a time limit, so I wanted to just say my heartfelt thank you, Alex, for getting up so early, chatting with us. It's always an absolute pleasure. It's been really nice to share it on the Supper Club. Valentino popped in. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. So thank you, everybody, for watching. A big kiss to you. I'm getting 10 seconds from the Geordie Lodger. Alex, I'll speak to you soon. You guys, I'll see you in the morning for Breakfast Club.